I think my coworker doesn't have a mouth underneath her mask. There are some things that you'd expect to get used to after several months, but apparently it doesn't get easier. Like this morning, when a coworker had asked, "Hey, how's it going?" I had tried for a smile before remembering that he couldn't see it beneath my mask. "The same as always, Pete," I replied. Which is to say, not good at all.
I started receiving weird VHS tapes in the mail. I never asked for them, but they keep arriving day after day. In every package is a note telling me the exact time to share it with the world, to get it seen by as many people as possible. If I don't, they said, bad things will happen. The following presentation is the contents of one of those tapes. Please help me and watch until the end.
I thought, a few minutes after I had sat down, my boss had come to my desk. His face was obscured by a thick blue mask. "How's the report going?" "Fine," I had replied. "It's mostly done." "Great. James, I'll be needing you to finish the one that was due for next week by Thursday," he had said. "I know these are challenging times and it's hard to keep up, but we need it. If these are challenging times, then why aren't you doing anything to make them less challenging?" I wanted to shout. God, I was so sick of the whole "hey, it's been difficult, so here's how we're going to do absolutely nothing to make it easier" charade. I'd rather they just stop talking about it if nothing was going to change. It wasn't that I hated my job. It was a fairly reliable one and I've always been satisfied with it. But that was back before COVID, when I had a life outside of work. It's been so long since I've gone anywhere or done anything else. I could always think to myself that eventually things would go back to normal. But in all honesty, I'm starting to forget the way life was before. And after months of this, it gets hard to believe that things won't be like this forever. It had started when a coworker walked by my cubicle. I kept my head down, expecting whoever it was to pass by. To my surprise, she approached my desk. I looked up to see the woman who worked at the cubicle to the left of mine. "James," she began. "Hey, Miranda." I greeted her. As I spoke, I noticed how stuffy the air inside my mask was. My breath was hot and muffled, and the warm temperature of the room wasn't helping either. "What do you need?" She gave a small smile, or at least her eyes suggested she was smiling beneath the mask. I realized I hadn't seen her whole face in a long time. I just bought a new package of masks yesterday. These ones are much more comfortable and durable. They're made of better material too. Her own mask was red. "That's great. Where did you get them?" My mask seemed to grow more uncomfortable against my face. The damp muffle of the fabric was such a heavy sensation that I almost twitched against the urge to tear it off. "Oh, come on," Miranda said sweetly, "I want to give you one for free. People around the office have been acting so disappointed all the time." I noticed the fabric over the front of her mouth shifting as she spoke, almost as if her tongue was sticking out of her mouth and poking against the fabric. But that couldn't be right. I just wanted to do something nice for everyone. I'm not sure about this. I stared more closely at her mask. Where are the masks right now? The cloth of her mask was pale, and I could almost make out the outline of a dark shape behind it. Were those her lips? Maybe she was wearing dark lipstick. "In the break room," she gestured. "Come with me. Just take off your mask." Did women even wear lipstick under their masks? I wondered what Miranda looked like right now under her mask. "It's fine." I tried to recall what her mouth looked like. "I'm managing fine with my own mask. Thanks for the offer though." I suddenly realized I couldn't remember what she looked like at all. Miranda laughed. "I was just playing around. I wanted to see your face again." How I tried to picture her face beneath the mask. Nothing came up. I said, "I wanted to see your face again. Why don't you take off your mask? Just for a few seconds. It wouldn't be for long. We haven't seen each other's faces in months." As though reading my mind, she teased, "Do you even remember what I look like?" "Oh, of course," I stuttered. "Why do you want to see my face?" The thought that I actually didn't know what she looked like wouldn't leave my mind. "James," she groaned, "I just wanted to see a friendly face." Me? We didn't even know each other that well, and never spoke much even back in the pre-COVID days. "Let's take them off for a short while." "Don't you miss the human connection?" Miranda coaxed. "Of being able to see another human face to face? Aren't you tired of being so alone and isolated all the time? If you take your mask off, I'll take mine off too." I did miss all of it. The blank space where her mouth was supposed to be in my imagination was suddenly all-consuming, like an itch that could only be abated by seeing her real face with my eyes. At that moment, I wanted nothing more than to see her face. I don't know. I couldn't draw my eyes away from her. It isn't safe. The desire to take off my mask was overwhelming. Just for a few seconds. She begged. It can't hurt to do it. She raised her hands up to her face, reaching behind her ears. As though compelled, I mirrored her. Do it, Miranda whispered as I looked into her eyes. My hands moved to my mask. I watched everything through a daze. My hands seemed to be moving against my will. A quiet thud resounded through the room. Shaken from my trance, I saw that another co-worker had dropped a heavy file on the floor. I regained my senses and tried to lower my hands subtly. Hey, I forced out a laugh as Miranda looked back at me. That was a funny joke, but maybe you should get back to work now. But her eyes darted around the room. I wasn't. I looked back to my work dismissively. By the way, maybe joke about something else next time. You know people around here take the mandates very seriously. Okay. I ignored her as she walked away. My mind raced. The government has finally managed to flatten the second wave of cases and you sure as hell aren't going to fuck it up by going and taking your mask off. And for what? Exactly? What even happened there? The urge to take off my mask was gone, but the horrible curiosity to recall what Miranda looked like under her mask was still there, pushed to the back of my mind. I ignored it and continued working. After a while, the thought entered my mind and bidden that she could have no mouth and I wouldn't be able to tell. I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up abruptly and went to the break room. Lunch had passed a while ago. The lights were off and nobody was inside at the moment. I walked around the big table, scanning the shelves and walls. There were plenty of framed staff photos, for business events, awards, the like. I've never really paid attention to them before, but I'm sure Miranda was in some of them. It was irrational, I knew, but I desperately needed to see her face for myself. There was a burning curiosity inside me that demanded it. As I reached the far side of the room, I heard several pairs of footsteps approaching. In a split-second decision, I ducked inside the small closet in the corner. I peered around the door to see Miranda and William, another colleague, enter. They were leading Jasmine, a new colleague. Miranda spoke, hushed. All right, the masks are just over there. Would you please take off your mask? Why? Jasmine asked. I don't think. Miranda sighed impatiently. William, she ordered. You know what to do. She began to remove her mask. Hey, what? Jasmine began. I held my breath as Miranda pulled the cloth away from her face. Her whole mouth was black. It stretched from one side of her face to the other, much wider than a normal mouth should be. Her lips were thin folds of skin that curled and peeled back to reveal a void of nothingness on the inside of her mouth. When she smiled, it was nothing short of demonic. At that moment, William roughly grabbed Jasmine, pinning her arms behind her back and peeling off her mask. Before she could shout, he clapped a hand over her mouth. Miranda surveyed her prey. I couldn't tell from her messed up mouth, but by the way her eyes moved, she seemed to be smiling. It is time for you to join us, she said, her voice in a human growl. Her lips parted. A bright red tongue, thin and lined with barbs on the sides, darted out. It twisted like a tentacle as she tasted the air. William loosened his hold on Jasmine, who gasped for air. Miranda struck. Her tongue shot forward, spearing through Jasmine's mouth and sticking into the back of her throat. Jasmine writhed for a few seconds and blood dripped from her mouth. Miranda withdrew her tongue, and it slithered back between her lips. As I watched, Jasmine's mouth began to change form. Her lips curled into the same black shape on Miranda's face. After a few moments, she blinked and straightened herself. A thin red tongue slid over the side of her mouth. You're going to help us infect the others, Miranda said. There are many others of us out there. Jasmine nodded. Who are we going after next? William demanded. His mask was still on, and his voice sounded normal. Miranda shrugged. I tried to get that boring guy in the corner, James. He wouldn't come with me. Why don't we let our newest member choose the next victim? William suggested, gesturing to Jasmine. Sure, Miranda said as she put her mask back on. It's sure convenient there's a pandemic going on, William added. They won't see us coming. With that, the three of them exited the room. I finally got up after I was sure enough time had passed that they wouldn't be watching, then made my way back to my cubicle. On the way, I passed by my boss. "I'm going home," I said curtly. "Pardon?" He looked at me in confusion. I briefly wondered if he had also been infected. After all, there were probably others like Miranda and William in the office. I tried to see if there was any hint of a tongue under his mask. "I don't feel well." My tone was firm. "I'm going to go get tested at the hospital. If I'm fine, I'll finish the reports at home." At home, I sat alone thinking over what I had seen. I couldn't come up with a reasonable explanation for it. I had no idea what had happened. But I do know that I won't be getting better anytime soon. I'll probably be sick for quite a long time, and wouldn't be able to go to work. I'll also be buying some thicker masks. I might also layer some thinner masks on top of each other. It seems like those mutants need their victims to remove their masks in order to infect them. Or maybe that only makes it easier. I have no idea what effect this would have on them. I can't tell you how many of them there are, or how to hide from them. But I do know that they are definitely out there. They are hiding among regular citizens, looking like any other person. They could be anyone. Stay safe and watch out, guys.